order this meeting of the budget appropriations budget hearing. My name is Scott Burns. I am co-chair of the Budget Appropriations Committee. I think at this point I will have, if I may, the committee members introduce themselves, and then other council reps introduce themselves, and then city officials introduce themselves. And then council co-chair and I will have a few things to say.
I'm Ernie Newton, co-chair of the budget.
Jeanette Herod, committee member.
Richard Ortiz, committee member.
Amy Marie Vizzo-Panicia, committee member.
Anita Martinez, non-committee member.
Maria Valle, non-committee member.
Heidi Nieves, council president.
Alfredo Castillo, committee member. Non-committee member.
Great. And we also have committee, council rep Pereira. Tom Gaudet, do you want to introduce yourself and the team?
Sure. Tom Gaudet, Chief Administrative Officer.
Dave Reyes, Deputy CAO.
Fred G., Deputy CAO.
Mika Olson, Project Leadership.
Brian Rainieri, Director of OPM.
Yes, Plato, Finance.
Kathleen Brickett, OPM.
We have a quorum.
All right. Nope. So before I say anything, do you want to take the floor first?
Okay, as you know, this is our first meeting, second rather, and I'm going to ask that budget deals with numbers, personnel. And we're going to really stay on focus on those two things. If you need to talk to whoever comes before us on an issue in your district, take them outside. I'll get to you in 1 second. Because we got a lot of work to do. And it's very important that we just stick to numbers and personnel. Those are the two things that the budget committee is responsible for. So we're gonna run it like that. And hopefully we can get through it, and then we can move on. So I will turn it over to my co-chair.
Thank you, Ernie. So yeah, we really want to keep as focused as we can be. So I'm asking, so we don't hear a lot of history lessons, we don't hear a lot of personal anecdotes, we don't get caught up in our individual issues, to really stay focused and talk about what's before us. I will add also, I think we're all aware there's a cloud of federal issues hanging over us that will filter down through the state and maybe even directly to us, and we need to be cognizant of that, which is why I think we need to be very, very careful with regards to this budget. I also hope that we're dealing very honestly and openly with the administration, that we can have a good two-way street. And I know it may not be a nice thing to say, but I will say it, that our budget appeared on a local blog.
That's right. That's right.
Before we got our hands on the budget.
That's right.
So that's, we're
right.
trying to deal good faith, forthright with each other. We need to, needs to be a two-way street. So I think we need to be in that vein. So I think at this point then we'll have, yep. Sure, yep. So co-chair made a suggestion, which I think is a good one, and not to put anybody on the spot, but we do have Deputy Chief of Staff from the Mayor's Office and a state rep here. I don't know if you have any quick update as to what things are looking like, or concerns, thoughts, again, to kind of start driving this budget in the right way.
We met with the governor yesterday.
Speak up, Fred.
We met with the governor yesterday and Speaker of the House to accommodate our budget shortfalls. We had a really good conversation with the governor and a better conversation with the speaker. So the state is challenged, has some challenges with Medicaid and Medicare because of the cuts the president has made. So once they rectify that with the governor, the leadership, then they can satisfy our requests. The Speaker of the House was very, very, very encouraging. And the governor, a little different. He asked us to do a favor for him that we probably wouldn't do. But we had a very powerful conversation. Tom and Constance were both in the room, and they can elaborate a little further if they'd like.
Just acknowledge that committee member Fred Hodges is here now. Okay, great. And Constance, do you want to?
The only thing that additionally I'd add is last week, Tom and I met with our two senators as well as President Pro Tem Martin Lee and Majority Leader Bob Duff and their staff to meet the same pitches. So we've made our first rounds of official meetings. We'll also be meeting with appropriations and finance as well. And you know, I feel very good with Speaker Ritter's backing.
Yeah, I mean, so there've been a lot of meetings happening back to back. Yesterday we had a very productive day in Hartford, running all over the building. And we are asking for a lot in the midst of, you know, as Scott said, chaos at the federal government level and also a lot of uncertainty with the state budget and how things are going to pan out. Part of the reason we're asking for a lot of money is because relative to where we were last year, the governor's proposed budget, as sometimes happens, not the first time, actually has us getting less money this year than we did get last year, in part because the state was funding so many of their obligations to municipalities, to nonprofits, and other things through the use of their state ARPA dollars. From the governor's perspective, I don't think it's any secret that he said, well, everyone knew that, you know, ARPA money was going to run out. But of course, when we engaged in these negotiations with the Speaker and the Senate President and Governor last year, you know, everyone was on the same page that whatever money we got new money last year through ARPA, that they would try to make us whole this year with that. So that's about $7 million. Then there's the motor vehicle assessment issue, which you just voted on Monday. And the state legislature, in reaction to car prices, so during COVID, as you know, used car prices went up a lot, right? And so the problem was cars were getting older, and yet the taxes on those cars were going up because the values of those cars were going up. So a lot of legislators reacted to that reality by totally changing the way that cars are assessed now. So instead of doing it the other way, based on like Kelley Blue Book values and those sort of things, now there's a schedule, an assessment that started at 90%. So first year you have a car, 90% of the value, then 85, 80, ticking down to it's not worth anything anymore. And that new schedule cut us, because that money comes to the city ultimately. It's a savings for the taxpayer, but it came to the city as like almost a $4 million hit. Now, they gave us a small fix. A couple weeks ago, you may remember that the legislature was voting on a small fix to this, which the governor initially vetoed because of another thing. They figured it out with him, they passed it. You all enacted something the other day, which now fixes part of that problem. That's still a $3 million hit. So right off the rip, before we've done anything, before a single expense increase in this year's budget, we are short $10 million from the state. No fault of our legislators, obviously, because they haven't voted on the budget yet. It really just is where the governor's budget started. And then, of course, we're asking for more than we got last year. So that's the conversation we had. Of course, we talked about other things, too. We talked about the school system was a huge topic. They're very, 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 very concerned about the Bridgeport Board of Ed. And we kept hearing it all day from multiple groups. And also the soccer proposal for the east side, it was also a hot topic among some other things. So, you know, we're working really hard. We're, you know, actually, you know, they're actually pretty sympathetic to us, but I think the problem is they're worried about what's going to happen to Medicaid. And they're worried about if the Republicans decide to slash Medicaid a lot, then the state would pick up those financial obligations, and that's a huge amount of money. And then, of course, the legislators, you know, Fred knows as well, are fighting with the governor over loosening the guardrails or not. The governor's a little more conservative on that issue than the members of the Democratic caucus, which controls supermajorities in the House and the Senate. So there's a lot of uncertainty about where we're headed in here, and some of that is reflected in this budget. So I think we're going to get something. I think they really feel for us and know our issues and want to support us, but there's still a lot of uncertainty about where we're going to land.
The allocation that we receive, just for the record, is going to come from the House. I can't speak for the Senate, but the House delegation is going to do our level best to make sure that we get every dollar that we need.
All right.
Question?
No, I just moving on.
Councilman?
Hey Fred, is it, how can I say? Is it like, we could get this, or we can't get this? Is it the schools or the city? Is it that kind of like?
No, because it's two different pots of money, it's two different allocations of money. So in the volatility cap, we have 1.5 billion in revenue that's coming. And so the conversation is around how we're going to spend that, because if we don't spend it by June, it just goes into, I think, a retirement account or something. It pays something automatically. So the haggling between the leadership and the governor is they want to activate that now. The governor does not. He wants to wait and see what happens in Washington. But the Speaker of the House and Senate leadership, they don't want to wait. So that was their discussion yesterday after we met with the governor and Speaker.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful, and obviously we can assist in our voices. Happy to do that. Have any discussions as need be, and just keep us apprised if you can, as far as any changes, good, bad, or ugly. So, thank you. Really appreciate that. So with that, I think at this point we'll call on our OPM director, Mr. McNary. I think everyone's got most everyone this proposed budget document, which we should exhibit, and then we'll turn it over to Frank, and he can kind of walk us through some of the major changes. You got a committee member to make a motion to exhibit this?
Today's the 10th, right?
Today's the 10th, yep.
I make a motion that we exhibit fiscal year 2026 mayor's proposed operating budget as 0410-2025.
Do I have a second?
Dash. What letter?
Hey.
No.
Hey,
Hey.
hey,
Thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Second. Oh,
Aye.
oh, yeah.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, so Frank, if you want to take us away, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So thank you everybody for being here. As Scott said, everybody has a copy of the presentation I put together that will just go over the high levels of the budget. We'll go through a schedule of the detailed changes that are about $100,000 for it, and then open it up to any questions at some point. Tom can interject again about some operational things that we're going to speak of, but for the first few slides, I'll take everybody through. So, just first on a thank you, I just wanted to thank my staff. Kathleen's here, very dedicated to the city. Lonnie, Dave, Tamara, Maria, and Lynn in the finance office. It wouldn't be possible without them to put a budget together. And similar with all the department heads, it's a many-month process. It takes a lot to manage the day-to-day operations of the department and then put a budget together for the next fiscal year, especially with the constraints that we're facing. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that. And then thank you also to Ken and Tom. There's a bunch of people to thank, but everybody's been very welcoming in my first 6 months here. I just want to say thank you. So if we go from the cover page to the page 2, this is just an agenda, a table of contents, if you will. Just goes over the different pages or slides or sections, and just gives everybody a look at what we're going to go over. The slides are also numbered too, so if anybody gets lost, I'll just try to reference the slide numbers if I go along. Moving on to page 3. This is just just brief statements about the budget. The goal of this budget is to maintain stability for residents i.e., keeping the mill rate flat, which is especially difficult in the uncertain times that we're in. And that's also while recognizing that we do have contractual increases in critical needs that are just part of doing business for the city. So major revenue assumptions include an assumed increase in state aid, which we'll go over, higher expected interest on investments, higher estimates for the sales of property, we'll also go over. And those balances, those increases are offset by what we talked about, the changes with the motor vehicle tax. So those were some of the things that are helping and hurting this year. On the expense side, if you look at the percentage increase on the expenditures, it's a very low increase. And really the major drivers are salary and fringe benefits. Principal and interest in debt remains relatively lower, and that's due to various refinancing opportunities that the city is taking advantage of to keep that down. Page 4 is just a summary of the operating budget. There's kind of 4 components of the budget. City and BOE is what we'll spend a lot of time talking about. They're what I like to call self-balancing parts of the budget, so library and school nutrition. Those, the revenues equal expenses. So whatever is budgeted for expense, the revenue is going to equal. Library, because they get 1.3 mils, and that determines their budget for expenses. Nutrition, same thing, it's funded by grants, so whatever they budget for expenses, they're going to get in revenue. But this does show that the budget is balanced, and total, if you include all those categories, we have about $641 million in expenses and $641 million in revenue. But if you just take the city and BOE, it's about $603 million. Like I said, very minimal increases. It's a very maintained critical operation budget. If you go to the next page, just as summary slides, there's summary slides or parts in your budget book that go over a lot of spending areas, a lot of categories. I just thought this would be a good opportunity to say, okay, where does your money come from, right? What are your revenues for the city? And Bridgeport, like many other municipalities, a major revenue is property taxes. And so that's one of the things. If grand list or like the assessment of motor vehicles doesn't go up, right, that's going to create a challenge because you're going to get less in property taxes. Bridgeport also does receive a fair amount of state aid from the state, and part of this dollar that you have to put out here is proportional to the amount of revenue that the city receives from these sources. So you can see very predominant on property taxes, very predominant on state aid, and then there's all other categories, charges for services, payments in lieu of taxes for development that the city has with developers, things like that. Like I said, I just thought this did a good job of showing. If you go to page 6, this is essentially the same view, but in a different vein. So it just shows how you're spending. If you were to take $1 and split it up, right, all the spending here is proportional to the amount. The way this is split is proportional to the amount of spending. So education, a large part of the city expenditure. Public safety, another large part. Public facilities and general government, and then big pieces. You can see there's to the right of the chart that I have here, OPEB, library, and health services would make up what you may call in all other categories. But once again, similar to other governments, right? This is what you expect in a local government budget. Education, public safety, public facilities, and general government services are all large part expenditures. Moving on to page 7, I thought it would be good just to talk about the challenges we're facing. And when I got here, one of the things I did was you have to do a risk assessment, right? You have to know where your risks are. And a big part of addressing those risks is to plan ahead. So in crafting this budget, we were constantly thinking not only the year ahead, but 2 years ahead, right? To make sure that we will be okay if any of the challenges that I have here on this slide, come to fruition. So uncertainty in the global economy, just like it affects, everybody sees what happens in the stock market, right? Why is the stock market reacting to maybe tariffs? Because the price of goods is going to go up, right? And that affects us the same way as it does private companies. It may not affect interest rates directly, but at the very least, right, if the cost of capital projects goes up, then the amount you have to issue in debt goes up, right? And then the amount of debt service that we have to pay on that goes up. So that is definitely something that, like I said, just like every household, we have to watch and monitor. Similarly with the grants, we've all seen stories about grants. I want to say about 2 weeks ago, we actually got a stop work order from a grant that was passed through from the state that was it was for a health grant. It was for some vaccination clinics and some other things that are health related. And we got a stop work order. So we had to pretty much close out the program and send, some final reports to the state. But that's the kind of environment that we're dealing with in that we all know that maybe some of these things are coming, but we don't know how real they are, and we don't know what's going to be cut. So these are all things that we're monitoring and that we took into consideration when we were putting the budget together. Also, ARPA funding, there's $12 million in the use of ARPA funding for this year's budget, right? But that's also on the tail end. So once again, thinking about not only this year, but 2 years from now, that money is going to be, that is no longer going to be available to help us in our general fund operating budget. So when looking at expenditures here, like I said, we had to take that into account, that revenue source, almost $12 million, is not going to be here in future years. And like we all said, threats to Medicaid, you saw on the prior slides, we get a lot of money from the state. If the state doesn't do good, then we may not do so good. And so that's something to be cognizant of. But how do we address these challenges? Like I said, debt service is low this year because we refinanced debt and we were doing things like that. Office of Policy Management, we're trying to help departments set goals, identify what's critical to their operations, and guide spending to fund those things. And also just making sure that the city has adequate reserves to weather whatever storms we may have. So I'll stop at that page.
Just
and then,
pause for just to acknowledge Councilwoman Spell is here. So we're going to page 8.
Page 8, and I think that's a good stopping point because I'm going to let Tom talk about some of the some operational areas before we get into a line-by-line review that we're all accustomed to.
Is that how you want to do this? So what we were thinking was maybe jump into some of the topics we were going to talk about, which are touching on the budget, because then the line by line, I don't know if you're going to do that all tonight or whether you're going to bleed into Saturday, how you wanted to handle it.
So when you're talking operation, are you talking about like your?
Yeah, our budget and just like some stuff that's in that goal sheet that affects the budget.
I don't know about others. I would like to hear some of the proposed changes, Frank, at least some of the bigger ones. I know you kind of limited it to 100,000, but if there's a few at least you want to highlight for us, I think that might be helpful. Even though we can look at it, but just maybe hear some of your thoughts on a few different pieces. And then maybe, speak a little more, Tom, to your programs. Ken?
Yeah, just a quick, before Frank starts doing the kind of bigger lines, if you don't mind, Tom, I was just going to throw 2 thoughts out to you.
Yeah.
In conjunction with what Frank's saying. From my perspective, watching the last few years, I kind of feel like we in the council felt we had some flexibility. Added positions, this department's short, this department's lean, let's give them some more. I really believe this is a year, and next year, we're really going to have to cut back on that. I think if we continue down the road, seeking more positions as much as the need is there for some departments, the whole is just going to get greater. So this guy, when Frank went to the departments, he really kind of talked to me in terms of zero-based budgeting, position cuts, trying to make sure that, people try to live within means and what they had. See if it's something specific that we proved is justified. We took that into account, but there's very few reposition requests in here. And then the other quick thing is just on the non-personnel side, we are trying to do what we can on big spending lines. So for example, utility costs, if we're trying to put programs together to lock into prices when the price drops, do things to make it easier so that your budget has less risk in those lines. But it is a much tighter budget, not going to have the kind of surpluses that we had the last 2 or 3 years. So I just thought I should
So, yeah, so maybe Frank, just, hit the 4 pages of the revenue increases and.
Yeah, sure. So, if we start off with the general fund revenue increases, which is page 8 or slide 8, you can see the first one is our assumed state aid, what I call gap closing, which is what we're gonna request in additional from the state. So FY '25 adopted budget was $9.2 million, we have $15 million there as a request. And the justification for that is on the right side of here, but $7 million is what we actually received in FY '25. We're asking for another $3 million to make the city whole on the revenue loss that we had from the car tax, and then an additional ask of $5 million. The supplemental revenue sharing grant, which is item number 2, that's just proposed per the state budget. The state rejiggered the way the funding, the way it would send funding to the city essentially in its proposed budget. So you see I have a note there, it says transition from state pilot. So you're gonna see a $5 million increase on item number 2, but maybe a $5 million decrease on the next page for another item. So essentially it's a wash. Interest on investments is a $950,000 increase. That's just a function of the cash we have in the bank and interest rates. So we're just increasing our expectation based on where interest rates are, how much cash we have, and also prior experience. Outside overtime reimbursement, that's being increased by about $700,000 to true it up with closer to what we actually receive in outside overtime reimbursement, and that is offset by increases in the police overtime line due to contractual increases, but also just truing the number up closer to what it may actually be in actuality. Sale of city property is another assumption. We have $3.5 million in the budget. It's about a $400,000 increase. And that just assumes we have the sale of the airport in there and maybe 1 of 5 properties that we identified that could be sold. So that's $3.5 million in FY '26. So that's everything pretty much. Those are all the really big ones. I can keep going down the list, or I can stop for questions. You don't?
No, go to the next page.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, page 9 are your revenue decreases. Like I said, I mentioned $5 million, a $5 million increase on the increases page. That was going to have an offset of about $5 million, so that's what you see as item number 14. Current taxes, city share, like I said, that's due to predominantly the motor vehicle assessment being reduced. So that ended up being a $2 million hit, really, because my assumed collection rate for motor vehicles increased a little bit, and also for the action of the council, so to lessen the blow to the city. The remainder are really based, the remaining changes are really based on historical actuals and where the department thought we were trending and what would be achievable in FY '26. So if you look at parking violation, municipal share of vehicles, I'm sorry, I'm looking at line number 17. That is another state aid number, so that's just what they put into the budget as a proposal. So that's going down by about $461,000. But 3 more housing units, parking violations, overtime surcharge, and parking meter collections. Those are just looking at actual trends, seeing how we're trending in the current year, and throwing up those numbers. So that would be it for my comments on the revenue decrease page.
Ernest.
First question, I know you all talked about downsizing or not adding more people to job-wise. But let's take the permits department. The number 1 complaint from developers is that they cannot get permits 6 months down the line, 5 months down the line. That's really a shame that people say, don't build, don't do nothing in Bridgeport, because by the time you get a permit, it's not worth it. So I'm hoping, Tom, CAO, that we've got to get a better mechanism on this permit stuff, because that's where the money comes from. We're talking about generating revenue. we lose a lot of revenue because we can't get the jobs done. So I just want you to think about that there are departments that maybe if they were increased, we can get more money for our band, because the permits department is terrible. And we tell y'all that every year.
Mr. G?
Through the chair, Mr. Reyes and I have met with the permits department on several different occasions. We acknowledge there are some challenges in the permits department, but some of the onus has to go back onto the developers too, and their architects, and their drawings and schematics, because the permits department just can't approve it because they have a relationship with someone in the city. But they're going to have to make sure that when they are going to the permits department, they have all of their documentation and they are ready to go from fire marshal on down. So we're doing our due diligence to make sure that the department is running as efficiently as possible. But we need the developers and the contractors to also do their part too. Mr. Reyes, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So Deputy Fred G is spot on, right? We called the meeting when we started getting, complaints from the council, but also from the community. And I actually walked over to the fire marshal's office and the buildings department and saw the portal to see it firsthand. And Fred's spot on, right? The developers are trying to not comply with state and federal regulations on certain things that need to be done. And we're not going to turn a blind eye. Because what if a building falls and say the city turned a blind eye? You guys are going to hold us accountable and not the developer, right? Because we signed off on it. So our team is instructed that they're going to comply with the rules of the law. And the developers are playing politics themselves. But we're not going to play politics with people's lives, and these buildings are going to be put up appropriately. ADA has also been a big thing that these developers are trying not to comply with, but as we all know, those are federal regulations. So as long as they comply with what the state requires and what the city requires, there shouldn't be a bottleneck there anymore.
Okay, all right. I'm only telling you what developers have told me that.
Yeah. You can always refer them to Fred and I.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you're right. There's a little, but it's on the city. It's not really developers, the architects. The city does not have good plan reviewers. They got one Spanish woman in there, and she's burnt out. You have two other people that are in there. They come in, use the bathroom, an hour. I'm in there. If anybody's in that building department, it's me, because I know what's going on, and they call me, hey, Fredo, can you help me out? So I try to, you got one guy in there, one guy, that three other cities fired him, and we picked him up, and nobody wants to say nothing. I like the director. He's letting him do what he wants. There's people that they take their money, they show it, $850,000. They wrote a check. 8 months later, nothing. And they have to get Arbin to get this guy, and then when he gets there, he runs the show. For me, if it was me, I'll fire him. Because we don't need somebody like that. He's causing problems to the whole city. One guy, and nobody wants to say nothing. You got another guy, nice guy. He changed, and wrote, the lady that does she said, Fredo, I look at it, I give him the change orders, I send it in. Now I have to start with this one. But this one goes in the back. So she's bringing it down. I'm just saying what's going on. What's going on in there. I'm saying what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on in there. We need more plan reviewers in there, more. People are leaving. We just lost another electrician because the way he got disrespect in there. I'm just telling you, there's a problem. The fire marshal is the last stop. And right now, we're helping them with that. I'm in there. I said, listen, they got new guys. They're going through the process. The fire marshal is the last stop. And then it goes back to building. So it's a jungle in there. But I'm just saying that it's the building department. If we don't get the revenue, this is our problem. Nobody wants to do business. They don't want to come to Bridgeport to do business. They don't. Bridgeport, forget about it. It takes too long. So I'm just saying, we have to fix that. And you guys we got to figure it out. One guy.
All right.
Councilwoman Hurd?
I'm gonna say one thing, this is not only about the developers, I've gotten private families that have had to wait for an inspection for 7, 8, 10 months because the buildings department can't get out there. That's where we have an issue, and I know contractors, I've spoken to them too and all that, but my concern is the private person that has to wait when all their stuff is done, and then you have to have somebody come and inspect, and that, I mean, that you should have to wait 8, 9 months, because sometimes your insurance depends on that. So that's where the critique is, and I wanna stick to numbers, because again, I'm not feeling great.
As you guys see more issues, please flag it for us.
Real quick, I just want you,
Yeah,
we
that
talk about
department-
monies,
Yeah.
this is a place where we could get more money if we had some more staff, so that's what I'm
Raising salaries every 5 minutes.
Go
Okay.
right ahead.
Page 10, Frank?
Going on to expenditure decreases, we do have $5 million in there for pending budget decisions, so essentially, this is a process, there were decisions that we wanted council input on before we put them actually in the budget, so that's what that $5 million is, it's a placeholder. We'll come back with the menu of decisions that we have for you. Retiree medical, decreased by about $884,000. Per expected expenses and other revenue sources in the internal service fund, the city pays for its health insurance benefits in a separate fund called the internal service fund, and essentially what I did there was I looked at the expenses of the revenues coming in that fund and determined how much I thought would be adequate, and I felt that this number was appropriate. Attrition, we're increasing that by $500,000, just to reflect that we expect some additional attrition in the next fiscal year, and so we wanted to account for that. Vehicles I decreased by about $445,000. That's just like we said here, like Ken said, this is a year where we have to be very careful because we're not only thinking this year, but 2 years from now. So I only put in what I thought was absolutely necessary for departments to have. Utility services, I just took a look at actual usage, where departments were trending, and so I found that there was some savings to be had there. BOE, building maintenance supply services, so there's a BOE budget, there's also a line item in the public facilities budget for Board of Education, spending for miscellaneous facilities project. That number was increased last year because of the facility study. That study's done, so this proposal can put it back to where it had been in prior years. And then for the other post-employment benefits trust fund, we decreased that contribution to $100,000, and that would be all for the bigger line changes that I have. I could go on to the next page and send it out.
The required reserve contingency, is that our rainy day fund? No?
So that's essentially your reserve for contractual so there's some labor contracts that haven't been settled yet. And so that is a reserve for, when those contracts settle, to have the adequate funds to pay the
Right,
contract.
okay. Next.
General fund.
General fund,
Slide
city.
11. So these are our expenditure increases, like I said at the beginning of the presentation. Really salary and fringe driven, we have about a $3.7 million increase due to salary increases and contractual wages. Board of Ed increases proposed to be $3 million. MERF pension employer contribution is about $2 million. Citywide health insurance, just numbers we got from the state partnership plan are about $1.8 million. All other PD overtime, like I said, I had increased revenue in the outside overtime for outside overtime reimbursement, and then I also increased some expense for the PD overtime, so that's reflected there. Debt service and principal going up very minimally. Pension per actuarial report, so I just reflect the numbers that are in the report. Outside overtime expenses, once again, these are expenses that I increased the budget for because I also had that offset on the revenue side. seasonals, golf course in particular, the minimum wages went up a lot over the last 3 years, and that line has been the same. And that golf course does produce a lot of revenue, and these people are, people that maintain the course. So I felt that that was important to make sure that they had adequate funding for that. There's an increase for Bridgeport Promise of about $250 to bring funding to $500,000. And then police pension relief fund, once again, actuarially driven. Lighthouse, so Lighthouse had 13 applications that were all similar. They were all the same applications for whatever reason. 3 of them weren't accepted, the rest were. So the city, to continue that program, they requested money. They requested money to continue funding the full 13 programs that they had originally applied for. So there's the $200,000 increase that's predominantly driven by that. That's all I have for that page.
Question. Seeing that, since I've been here all the years on the police overtime budget, what would happen if the budget committee cut some of the police overtime budget, seeing that nobody can seem to get it in order? Would that be a way to help control the overtime? Because I can only speak for me. I'm tired of seeing the top wage earners in this city. I'm tired of that. And it's only because of the overtime we give out. And I know it's contractual, but if somebody should get overtime, you should have the rookies, the people that just come in, they should be getting overtime. So, what do you think about that idea? Because evidently our police department can't control overtime. And I've been here ever since doing the budget, and they can't control it. I'm convinced of that.
I guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to answer that for you, Councilman Nguyen. So you said it, contractual, right? So when it comes to overtime, we can't say, I like Alfredo, he's a rookie, he can get, the overtime, right? It goes by however way the union contract, determines it. So for example, let's say, we need to do, the UI company or it's a project, right? And Fredo, is a patrolman, he can't do it. They go through the list of patrolmen, then it goes from patrolman to the next rank, which will be sergeant, right? Let's say we can't identify a sergeant that can be able to do it, then it goes to a lieutenant. And then when you go to a lieutenant, it goes to captain, and then the last ranking officer that can be qualified for overtime is a deputy chief, right? Because that is still in the union, right? So those are the protocol there.
Let me do a follow-up.
Yeah.
Then I would suggest to the CAO and to the mayor that when budget time comes, there's some things that we should stand for and fight for. And I would hope that at their next hearing, budget hearing, that those be some of the things that the city fights for. Because for them to work overtime, and that's added to their pension, whoever did that, and the city let it happen, shame on them. Because it's going to bankrupt the city eventually.
So, to do, Mr. Chair, I think we're going to start seeing, the police is going to come before you, right? So they're going to come prepared to answer a lot of these questions. One thing you're going to see that the chief also started doing, he issued a memo, I think which was back in October, that overtime has to be now more streamlined and improved by a ranking officer, so that's going to be able to put some controllables in place. Right, a memo did go out. And the labor is fighting, one of the fights with the chief is how he's trying to put some controllables around the overtime. I won't speak for the chief. When he comes here, he'll give you a better detailed response on some of the things he's been implementing with the last 6 months to help streamline the overtime. But I can tell you, Tom and I and Fred have had the chief in our office several times to talk. Right, it's a concern to us as well. What controllables will be put in place. It is our hope now with 2 assistant chiefs that a lot of things will now be more streamlined and have controllables there with the proper chain of command structure, so that we can know what's coming in, what's coming out with the outside overtime and inside overtime as well.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can expand on that, because we just had a meeting with the new, let's call it management team at the police department a couple weeks ago. And the question I posed to them is, tell us, if the budget committee was running the police department, how much would overtime be? Because it's contractually obligated. Just like, you know, if the best manager in the whole wide world ran the police department, there's gonna be some overtime number. Because I do believe that most of the overtime number is truly out of the chief's hands. But we can't get a sense because of lack of information. It's the way they track it. And because there's definitely some abuse in the system, we cannot figure out what that number is. So we said to them, we're gonna give you some time to get your act together, because you're gonna have to answer the city council on this when you have your budget. Our goal, and we're gonna try to meet with them, we're meeting with departments before they come before you. Again, I'll talk about what the process Frank went through in a minute, but we're gonna meet with them again and see what they come up with as an answer for this, because we'd like to know what that number is, because that's the number you should hold them to, right? And we've played games for years in the city budget, as many of you know, where like, you know, the city council takes a stand and cuts the overtime number, even though it's already way less than what the number actually is. The games go back and forth, right? This isn't real, but let's try to be real. What is it, chief? What is it, assistant chief? So we're gonna try, I agree with you, and we can't answer it either. It's kind of embarrassing, you know, so we're with you on that.
All right.
Question for, I'm sorry, actually, Mr. Hodges first, and then Councilman Spud. Sorry.
The brass police force, are they union?
It's after the deputy chief. So Bridgeport, from deputy chief down, all union. From assistant chief above, no, not union.
Can you explain to me, or I need to get this from the police department, what is all other overtimes and outside overtime, outside police overtime? What is the difference between them two? And the contracts that they have, is the city involved in the contracts, or that's strictly police involved in the contract?
Yeah, so they negotiate with the city. So outside overtime is like road jobs and things, so when they're being hired by an outside entity, so it's not the city of Bridgeport that's hiring them. And you're right, there's multiple sources that lead to overtime, right? There's not just one way. So it could be because most of it is because they need to fill a car, right? So there's a certain number of patrol vehicles, for instance. That's the biggest driver. Then you've got like city events where we have an obligation to provide traffic control, or parades and events, and then there's things that are a little more discretionary, like administrative overtime. So if they get called to come to a city council meeting, or the administration calls them in and they're not supposed to be working, the chief issued a memo basically saying all of that is canceled unless you absolutely have to, which is good. That's a very small portion, but it's discretionary. And then you get into the detective bureau, and there's some flexibility there. Some people stay over their shift because something really bad happened in the city, right? Someone got shot, something happened. And so officers are staying over their shift in order to manage that issue. Sometimes the police department has found that people are working on cases that maybe they don't need to do that day. Maybe they can do on their shift and they don't have to do it right then and there. But sometimes they get called in on their days off to appear in court, right? And so these are the things. So now there's so many different ways that you can lead to overtime. And the questions are, which portions of the total overtime budget are discretionary that we can get rid of, and which ones do we absolutely need to keep? Most of it you absolutely need to keep. But the question for this council and for us is, what is that number?
Like one of the things I think that we need to think about, how can we change that, is the flagging. I mean, we got businesses in the city and outside the city that do flagging, you know, and the overtime that the officers are getting flagging, that's a lot, you know, because you might have brass out there doing flagging, you know, and that's added to their retirement and overtime. And I would like to see the contract on that, on how can we change that and use some of our vendors that we have in the city that does the flagging.
So interesting point on that is we actually so first of all, you should know that we charge the vendors for that service. So they pay the city. And what they pay us, because of the latest contract where we increased the number, is pretty close to what we're spending. So in the budget, we usually call that a wash, those outside jobs. So it's not costing the city. But there are some efficiencies that can be gained there, because we do have some officers that have to manually pick up the phone and call officers in to do those jobs. And the police chief has committed to civilianizing as many roles as possible, because you don't want, people with badges on that go through training to be sitting at desks making phone calls, right? That's not what they're trained to do. This will be an issue of contention potentially with the union, because they may not like that, but there are other municipalities that have used software to try to get rid of human beings making phone calls and automate the process and have automated billing to the vendors that use the city. We actually just did a meeting the other day, Dave and I, with the police department to push that, so.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, even though you say it's a wash, I mean, it can be employment for somebody else, you know what I'm saying? If we are paying that from the vendor that's paying us, but still at the end of the day, sometimes, like you say, they might squeeze overtime out of that anyway. So my thing is, if we can get a vendor and get some of the guys in our city to do flag, I would love to see that. I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but just to take that off the table for them. I don't know when the contract comes up on that. There's a lot of people that do need jobs, and I know there's a lot of people that do that flagging, and I would like to see that taken out of it.
Okay.
Councilwoman Spell?
Hi.
Oh, hello, Councilman.
So, my question actually is in regards to the overtime, did they put in their report, like itemized list of events, how much?
This is what we wanted to do for you. This was a suggestion that Dave and I had for them when they come to the council. We said overtime's going to be a big issue. You should really break it down and explain what portion of their overtime budget is each of these categories, what drives it, what's mandatory, and where could they cut back.
Okay. That's it for now. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly, Councilman Spell. We did get the staffing report on PD, and there's some itemized information related to OT. But my observation, the information's incomplete. So even though consultant got data, I think it's incomplete. So we're kind of back at square one about what's real. So, all right, I think we're on the same page there. Frank, I just had one question. Do you know offhand what the MRF rate is for our employees this year? Because that's generally ticked up over the years, but I don't know if that's.
It's two tiered, so public safety has one higher rate and then others. The only tick up, I think, is about 0.5% this year. So the money's in the mixed monies and the money's in the other schemes.
Okay.
The general administrator is the lower rate, the public safety police and fire is the higher rate.
You can get that for us?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no problem. All right.
You said
All
the
right.
MERS payment was, I'm sorry to the chair, what was that again? The MERS
0.5%.
payment is what?
They don't have the exact numbers. They're gonna have to get them.
He said about 0.5%.
But it's up less, it was going up like 10-15% a year, because of the changes to the municipal retirement system. It's only going up a little bit this year, not as much as the last few years.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you, Frank. So that's a good guideline. I used to call this Nestor's cheat sheet. It still is, this is a lot prettier.
Yes, a lot better than the rest of neighbors.
So at this point, I think we'll turn it over to Mr. CAO, but before that, Council President.
I just have a question, a question and a concern. And I know that Ken has been pacifying me with the pension plan A. My concern is our actuarials, you put here, Frank, that according to our actuarials, but we do the budget planning for next year, but also in the contingency plan for the future year. So my concern is that the market, the way it's going, I feel like we are gonna have to talk about putting a little extra more savings just in case between the end of the year, the actuaries actually change. So I just wanna flag that, because watching the market, it's not doing very well.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that Council President is correct. This is based on the reports from September, so they're definitely going to be a little worse next year. But I will say, thankfully, as part of the closeout budget process last year, if you remember, I mentioned there were a few accruals. The only reason I did, there's an accrual of about $750,000 left for the risk of pension increases. So, so I do have a little slack in the balance sheet, not in the budget, but in the accrual account for some risk. But if we could find an extra $500,000 for these lines in the budget, I'd love to see it. I think we're gonna need it, but if not, we'll have to deal with it out of the accruals.
Okay. Other question?
Councilwoman?
I have two questions, thank you, Chair. These questions are for Frank. I was looking at where you listed our tax, let's see, where is it? I wanna make sure we get to the ramp. Maybe page 9. So my question to you was, and Ken probably can chime in on this as well, the new contract we voted on with the cars of residents that live here but are not registered here, did we include that part of the possibly funds that we're gonna be collecting from that into this budget, or no?
So that is one of the things in the pending decisions.
Okay,
Item that I have is that number, because it would be the first year, it's hard to predict.
all right, great.
range.
Mhm.
And so we would talk about what range everybody would be comfortable accepting.
Great, thank you. And then my second question, Mr. Chair, is there a possibility that we can enforce and increase the outside construction fees? Because I think that it costs the city more money after these individuals dig up the road. The city has to then in turn accrue the cost to repair it properly because they're not patching up the roads correctly. It is a council issue, we should probably revisit our ordinance, but on a finance perspective of it, maybe look at some numbers to increase the construction companies that are digging up the city roads. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I just thought about it, and Rich could be my witness on this, is that, because we were together.
Go ahead.
The fire marshal, it hasn't been increased in 10 years, 15 years. They only give $50 for a permit. It hasn't been increased. And the chief told us that he would like to revisit that to see if we could get a lot more money from the fire marshal. And that could be another way of, getting money, because it hasn't been increased in so many years. And he's the one who brought it up and said, hey, man, we should increase that number.
Through the chair, if I could respond to that. One of the things that I want
Folks, try to curb the side conversations. Thank you. Go ahead.
one of the things that I plan to look at after the budget season, just because I started in November, so there's a lot of time to look at it, but looking at a schedule of our fees, and how they may compare to other municipalities, and the last time they were increased, is one of the things that I want to look at. So
And just one more. We gotta find a way how to get money. We can't be selling our assets. Everybody talking about selling the airport. That's our asset. That belongs to Bridgeport. It's been there for all these years. And because we're desperate, we're gonna sell something that belongs to us, and then later on, we're gonna get kicked in the butt and say we should never sell it. We gotta find a way how we could use that airport to attract business to come to Bridgeport so we can have revenue. Because selling it, you're just putting a bandage on the wound. We gotta figure it out. The city should be running like a business, not like, hey, we just get money from the taxpayers. We gotta figure it out. And that's our big asset, an airport. And if we're selling it, then we might as well just sell the whole city too.
All right, let's move on. Yeah. All right, this is your presentation, as it were?
Yeah, I'm gonna work off this. Last year,
Let's exhibit this, and then, Tom, you can jump in, and we'll move from there.
In 04,
Yep.
That's what's good then, so we exhibit it.
Councilman Newton's gonna make a motion
Make
to
a
exhibit
motion.
this.
04, exhibit this, from the Chief Administrative Office, 0410-2025B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, we ain't done.
I was about to compliment you, but okay.
Okay,
Good, you can be out of it.
All right, go ahead, Tom.
go ahead, Tom.
Keep it focused. I know you're a lawyer in training, but keep it focused.
Yeah, no, honestly, I tell you, I ditched the,
Keep it focused, Mr. Chair.
some things never change. So, I didn't do the long PowerPoint I did last time because it was too much and overwhelming, and I think it's just easier if we just talk. I'm not gonna go through this whole thing. I think I'm gonna hit on some things and try to keep it on, I mean, all these are organizational issues, but a lot of them do touch on and are relevant to the budget, so I'll kind of go through them. If there's something I don't talk about that you want to raise, let me know. First, I want to say, and Frank's not here, but he's been doing an amazing job. I know that the council is very happy that he started using, for instance, the new capital forms and things like that, and there are more innovations to be made there with the capital budget in the future. I think is really great. Because that information, that process that he's doing with all of you is actually really helpful to us too. You know, so everything you ask for, our office benefits from the same thing, trying to, you know, you're running the city from a legislative perspective, we're running it from an administrative perspective, so all that stuff is really helpful. And, you know, I think the budget that we put together is a little more honest in terms of like trying to true up numbers, you know. There were just a lot of things that were just off that we just kind of let go and accepted, and I think he's really trying to make an effort to do that. I also think we've made a big effort, and I really want to thank the team, you all know them on this side of the table, that have really been trying to address some of the council's biggest concerns. For instance, trying to fill vacancies. I think we probably have the fewest vacancies open right now in this budget that we proposed to you than we probably ever had ever, because you told us to be on top of it and to fill the positions if they're open, and we heard you and we've done that. So this team hasn't been in the CEO's office for even a year yet, but I think we've done a lot of good and are trying to listen to you to the extent that we can to try to do what you want. We're not always going to agree on everything, but you know, I think we're making big strides. So with that, let me hit on a couple of topics that I think you'll be interested in. I'll start with something that you all pushed that I think is really productive, which was the hiring of a property manager. Boy, did that make a big difference. Made a big difference for us, certainly, in trying to get a much better understanding of what city properties are out there, whether we can, you know, sell a lot of them that we're just not using. Quite frankly, the city properties, a lot of them were a burden on public facilities because they have to be maintained. Some of them weren't being maintained. It's money that's not on the tax rolls, you know. And we have a number of properties where we have tenants, some of whom are for-profit, some of whom are non-for-profit, that still don't have lease arrangements. We're just kind of all over the place. This is one of the best things the city council ever did. And it's already yielded, you know, money in terms of doing a sale. We're looking at other opportunities, just a lot less now. You know, they started with the low-hanging fruit. It's a lot of very small, very, 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 very small city properties that you would never even think of that are really hard to do anything with. Obviously, we're trying to get a handle on the community gardens as well. You have a contract before you dealing with the management of a lot of those. So I think that is a really good thing. So that's something we've been focused on and will move on in the future. With respect to permitting and licensing, you all know that another thing the city council did was approve the contract for us to bring in an outside firm to study permitting, licensing, and code enforcement. And quite frankly, that was another really great thing you did. We got a full report, which was issued in December. The report was done on time and on budget, and we got really, really good information from that. As a result of that, we started making some administrative changes. For instance, in OPED, we are utilizing Max Perez a lot better to try to really be a connection between outside contractors that have an issue on a particular permit that they need to reach out to building, zoning, engineering, fire marshal. They don't know where it is. They don't know how to log on to the Park City portal to apply for something. They need a go-to, or the administration needs a go-to. He's our guy. But also, we're working through with all of those departments. We now have a monthly meeting of those departments that are sitting working through the issues. One of the biggest tasks they're taking on that they're in the middle of right now is they are killing all of the zoning applications. that are not the ones that go to boards and commissions, so P and Z, ZBA, those things are special, it's about 5 of them. But when you go to apply for a building permit, there's an application you first have to file on zoning, and then you get that approval, and then you have to go to building. We are building efficiencies by merging that all into one. We're getting rid of what I call the zoning two-step, of having to go to multiple departments, filing multiple applications for the same damn thing. So they're working on that as we speak because of that study. So just one example of progress is not going to happen overnight, but it's happening, and you are part of that.
Just a question on that. 'Cause we did hear the presentation from the consultant, and it's very clear that there are multiple departments, overseeing it. So is it ultimately your responsibility to make sure this gets moving right, or how can we look at that?
Yeah, most of them are OPED departments, but not all of them. Engineering technically falls under public facilities. Fire marshal falls under fire. Building and zoning are the big ones. They fall under OPED. WPCA is WPCA. So there are, many departments that report to different people. So in a sense, yeah, I suppose all problems are our problems, as we know every day, And so I physically attend every meeting I possibly can. I've missed one so far. I personally go, and ITS director Kurz Denton, who you all know is one of the best department heads we have. Honestly, I give him a ton of credit because a lot of this is software driven. He also used to work in OPED in close proximity, and so he knows operationally how this works too. He's going above and beyond his job to help try to make this work and to try to keep this process moving. So I give him a lot of credit. So,
All right, thank you.
Okay, so no further questions on that. I'll mention, this one doesn't really have anything to do with the budget, but I just think it's really important to know that we're really trying to focus on employee morale. And so we have, as promised last year, we said that we were going to focus on this and create what used to be called TQM, Total Quality Management. Now it's just called the Employee Morale Committee. We have a committee of more than a dozen city employees representing various different departments that meet in this space during the day, once a month, twice at most, to talk about issues. And they're working on recommended policy changes. They're working on things like, hey, the money that we pay for gym membership, we need to really fix the gym and do this type of stuff, morale and activity type things. They're working on a citywide survey that they're going to deploy next month, which is going to try to take the temperature on how people feel in their various departments, what we can improve, what would make working here better, how can we keep people here. So I just want to let you know, not really a budget thing, but something that we are doing that we think is really important. And we're not driving the bus on that. We're letting the employees drive the bus on that. It's their committee. We don't really attend. We're going to let them tell us what they want to see, and we'll work with them.
Yeah, just something, you may have said it when I stepped out. We talked about this last year.
Yeah.
Have you all done anything on evaluations? And the reason I say that is because I'm willing to bet that if you went down and asked every employee, when was the last time you had an evaluation? Some people haven't had evaluations in 20 years. And I don't think that if you're gonna run this like a business, everybody should be evaluated. And I'll tell you why. Because when it's time for a raise, we give it to them, whether they do the job or not.
3 times a year.
So I think that I would like to see the CAO and his team begin to look at, we need to evaluate, see if people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And you can't do it. And we brought this up last year. I was hoping somebody would come this year and say, guess what? We just started evaluations on employees. Now, that ain't no contractual, that ain't got nothing to do with going through the labor people or unions to evaluate the people we hire. So, can y'all help me? Come on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a lot of love and respect for you. I think it'll work both ways. If we're gonna hold people accountable just like we're gonna be held accountable, I think my ask, I don't wanna speak for my colleagues here, that if employees then come run to you as an elected official to then voice their concerns that we're holding them accountable, if you can then redirect them into us, that would be very helpful.
Well, I just think that when you hire somebody Just like if I'm in the corporate world, I get evaluated every year on my performance. What have I done? What am I doing? So I think that it's important that we should at least look at that. Because it's very important to me. And I know it's nothing to do with budget, but since you are here, I might as well say it again like we did last year. And it's not, nothing's happening. Saying, you know, people get raises because of union contracts, but you don't have a clue. If I came in and said, let me see the evaluation of their employment, nobody can do it, and that's a shame.
Respectfully, to the chair, respectfully, when we came last year, we were here for like a month when we came before the council last year. So I think that we can come together with some kind of program that we can work with civil service and labor relations. We couldn't do it on our own. We would need the department heads, we would need civil service, and it would be fair and equitable. And we would have to look at all of the jobs and job descriptions and to see how we can really sink our teeth into a real sustainable and impactful and meaningful evaluation.
But I will say one tangible thing we really did do is the first policy we actually changed that we rewrote, a lot of our policies are very old, is the discipline policy. And I don't mean to sound very scary. We do have a progressive discipline system, but we actually rewrote the thing. It was like a 2-page document, made it much more lengthy. We did a department training, so we did a retreat with our department heads and trained them on how to use it. Because one of the complaints we got from city council and from departments is, we waited till the last second when somebody was doing bad before we disciplined them, and then we didn't have anything documented, right? So we actually enacted a new policy with a new form that's standard across the city to try to address that issue. So we attacked, I think, a piece of what you're saying.
Okay, good. I'm gonna go to committee members, Herron and Viso Panicia, and then Councilwoman Martinez, Councilwoman Valle.
Thank you. I appreciate what you guys are saying. Some of the contracts on the Board of Ed side are the same contracts on the city side, the same unions, and it's in there about evaluations. It's in there about disciplinary issues. So this is not a new, you know, hoopla that it's something new here. We've been asking for this for years. And Tom has been here, and, you know, no disrespect, but you guys did come in early. But Tom has been here, he's heard this every year. And to say it's contractual, yeah, it's actually in our contracts right now. And I work on the Board of Ed side, and I used to be an executive on the union, and it's still on the city. It's never changed. So there's no 2 different contracts for one side to another. So it's there. It can be done. It's done on the Board of Ed side. Every year, every single employee gets an evaluation, including the supervisors, including the EDs, and everybody on the top. So this is not something new. So please, get it done, because it's not fair to the employees, it's not fair to our constituents, because there's some years that we get 3 raises in a year, and these are unaffiliates or they're the union. So we've got to correct this year.
Okay. Can you speak to?
Just to mention, just briefly, some of those forms are enforced, so I know, for example, every employee we've had, we've had to do evaluations, fill out the forms. There have been instances that new folks didn't make it the first 6 months because of those evaluations. I've had 2 situations in the last year with my various divisions. So it does happen. I mean, more experienced people, it happens with the merit, with the step increases.
But that's the probationary period you're talking about.
I know, I'm just mentioning that there is some of it. I agree it's not as comprehensive as what you're just asking, but I'm just letting you know some of it.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, we said this in the beginning, we're going to keep it to the budget. Let's keep it to the budget. We're off track again. I think that through the chairs, we want to schedule an informational with department heads and procedures on stuff. Now we can do that, but this has nothing to do with budget. And again, we have a long process. We've got a lot to crunch in a very short time, and I think we need to enforce that. And that goes for us and the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was looking at, we can discuss the budget for CAO's office, correct?
Let's
'Cause
hold
we're
off
here.
on that till he's done with the presentation.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll hold off on that one, but then I want to go back to, because we were talking about city properties here. right? That was part of the goals? Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, what I would like to say regarding city properties, let's sell our certain city properties across the board. Let's not pick and choose who we sell our city properties to. So if there's someone that's interested in being an owner of a city property, and we should be selling our city properties for the value that is assessed at, not for less, so that we can make revenue on it and not take a loss on it because it's a favor to someone that we know. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Bay?
Well, I'm just gonna have to make it very short because I was gonna speak on the employee morale, but because, again, we were reminded to stick to what we're here for, I will go personally and speak to Mr. Tom Gaudet in his office regarding employee morale.
Very good. I mean, it's not unrelated when we're talking about recruitment, retention, productive workers, so, you know, it is an important aspect. But carry on, Tom.
Yep.
Go ahead.
One thing that really is budget related, you'll see it in the public facilities budget. One of the other things, I keep saying, you know, city council said this, I do listen to you very much. And one of the big things I heard recently is construction. Construction services needs more focus. There's a lot of things going on between school construction, other city construction projects, the police station, and then of course one of my pet peeves is getting through these demolitions. So here's what we're planning to do, and it's in your budget, is we're gonna create kind of like a construction services team within public facilities. Michelle Terrell, who you know, is the construction services person.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh,
interrupt you right there.
Oh, okay.
Reminder, refresher, whatever, we try not to name names with associated positions, so.
I apologize. I thought the high levels we could say. Okay, so I'll leave it.
As best as we can.
Someone who's a construction manager for the city will lead a small team, just 3 people. So we're going to take a person that's already in public facilities and specifically assign that individual and begin training that individual. Actually, this is already underway to assist her with their construction management tasks. And in the budget, we've taken a vacant position that previously was in the chief administrative office as a project manager and are transitioning that to public facilities, because public facilities has come to us with this need, has been begging for the last year for more help in this area. The city council agrees. I've talked with the budget co-chairs, the council president separately about this, and you know, I think this is a really important need. We would take away under this model the demolitions from OPED. OPED is currently, just met with them yesterday, on schedule to begin to pursue the demos of multiple structures in the city, including Warnaco, Ostermoor, East Main Street, Producto, among other things. But the goal would be to transition that work to this construction management team so they can be experts in that and continue forward with that work. Because OPED has also complained that they don't really have capacity or expertise in that area either.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you mentioned those projects. Don't forget Harding High School needs to be.
Keep it focused.
Totally.
We mentioned
Yeah. Oh,
projects.
demos.
We mentioned demos, so just keep that on the forefront.
Totally.
Scott.
Fred, then
Okay.
yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add to what Tom is saying, so we took the project manager position in contract compliance and combined it because there wasn't enough responsibility on the contract compliance side. So we took the project manager and contract compliance and combined it together, so all of that will be under construction management going forward.
That's good, those 3 people, all right.
Okay. Amy Marie?
You said you're going to create a construction management team. Wouldn't this be a recreate?
Yeah, however you want to phrase it, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's really one.
We've had this before, and there was issues, and then it went to the wayside. So I just want to make sure that, you know, if we're going to do this, we're not recreating the situation. We're not, so you don't have to spend as much because we've already had something in existence for years.
Yeah. Well, we're not spending any new money. I think we're realigning the personnel we've got in one vacant position towards this. We've always had this one construction manager person, but there hasn't been a team. And if we're expecting this one person to take on all this work, and we want to take stuff away from OPED and get it focused on, there's only one way to do that, and it's to make a team, make it focused. This is what they're going to do. And by the way, on top of that, we've got, while we're dealing with the police station issue, I'll get back to police station, but there are fixes that need to happen there. There are multiple things that need to happen in this building, including some people were commenting on, we want to make this room functional because it's pretty stale and technology's clunky and all the things. You notice that there's certain minor flooring projects happening, including in the council suite that happened because, you know what I mean? So these types of things, we gotta.
Yeah. I want to ask, go back to Mr. G. You mentioned compliance, and that's an area, concerns me a little bit in terms of compliance with contracts, whether we have people come in and do work for us, or whether it's service or building or whatever. And I know there's been some discussion about maybe some role within the city attorney's office. So can you speak a little more about what that may look like?
So contract compliance is essentially certified payroll. So when we have a construction project and it falls under prevailing wages, the contract compliance officer makes sure that the GC or the prime or the developer is following the protocols set by the state with certified payrolls. That's essentially their responsibility. Way long time ago, not to go back too far, but they combined MBE compliance with contract compliance. When we came in 2015, we separated that and put MBE under SBE office and let contract compliance focus solely on certified payroll.
Okay. All right, so my concern is that we may yet still have, as I say, services that we contract for, and, are they being adhered to or not? Are buildings being built to spec as we think we're getting? There's matters like that I think are also important in terms of broadening the idea of compliance. But thank you for clarifying the MBE role. Okay.
Moving on.
Yep.
I'll just
I
say.
have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Regarding we're discussing the project manager that's transferring over to public facilities, is that correct?
Yes.
I have a question, and our chair can stop me if I'm out of bounds. The individual is transferring from which department to which department?
So it was a vacant position that was in the CAO's office.
Okay, so my question is, how did we determine the pay scale for this individual? Are we going by skills, experience, certification, background? Because that's kind of a high amount.
That's actually, I think it's 2 positions. If you look at it, it's not that number. I think there are 2 positions that fund that. I'm trying to memorize a single line in this whole book.
If I may, Councilwoman, what page are you on? 146.
I'm on page 146, and it's project manager, and then on the bottom it says one project manager position is being transferred to public.
I think I can clarify the answer to some extent, that the project manager position is moved out of CAO. And I honestly have not looked to see where it is in facilities.
Yeah,
Am I
it's in
correct?
facilities administration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
that's the comparison we should look at. So I think that's a fair point.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I will just say, this was a debate about how to fund the position because, of course, people that have expertise in construction management, they get paid pretty decently. We made the decision after discussing with the council budget co-chairs and the council president and pitching this idea to just keep it at what it was funded in the CAO's budget so that we didn't have a budget impact. And we'll try that and see if we can attract good talent for this. We didn't want to overspend. So we're trying to add capacity without breaking the bank.
Okay, we'll come back to that. That's a good question. Sort of here. Yeah. All right, Tom?
Yep.
What's the answer on that? Is it okay? Councilwoman asked a question? I don't know the.
President.
ACP.
Excuse me.
Councilwoman wants to ask a question. Is
She
that
can ask, yeah.
permissible? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, in regards to this east side campus, which, at least 4 might have changed, but I know Jasmine Reed's against it, I'm against it. I also have a lengthy meeting with Andre Lisa.
The question
Right.
for the budget.
We're opposed to it, and this constant reference that you're seeking money from the legislature when the school board has not authorized or voted on any new construction project. I don't understand what's the legal basis for it. School board controls every school construction project. They have not authorized an application for money for the Eastside campus. They have not started their extensive school building closure process. So I'd like to know why this is keeps coming up here when they have not voted or even started discussing the facilities master plan and applying for an Eastside campus. And I just want to be clear, it's important to me and Andre because Beardsley School, I have tons of constituents who are Beardsley. I have all the constituents at Edison School. I have constituents who are at Ball School. Let me finish why it's important. The other people are talking, they don't do that. Okay, and then we don't know where any of the 7th and 8th graders in those 3 schools attend. They may be at Dunbar. We haven't gotten that data yet. So I know Andre is pretty clear as of right now, he's not in support of this new campus. And I also had a conversation with another state rep. So my concern is that you keep promulgating that there's a construction school application and the school board controls that.
Yeah.
They have not authorized or voted on this in any way, shape, or form. So I think we need to make sure we're following the law. Thank you.
I'm happy to, and I know Ernie has that. Good. I did use the word potential. Absolutely, it absolutely needs to be voted on by a number of people. The city council needs to adopt this part of the capital plan. The Board of Ed needs to do an ed spec. The legislature needs to get it authorized. Not one of those things requires or includes me, so I'm with you on that. But what I was fearful of is the Board of Ed is potentially moving in this direction. If it happens, by the way, talked with Andre yesterday. It's never came. He did not express that he was against it. I'm not going to throw him under the bus. He can speak for himself because he's his own independent elected official. But I'll just say, if it happens, we need a construction management team that can handle it. If all the elected bodies I just talked about are against it, it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But this is just referencing, if it does happen, this is the team that would deal with it.
Ernie?
Let me say this. The building needs to be knocked down. Okay? That's my concern. And just to take a page from somebody who always says, shouldn't stick your nose in other people's district. The building needs to come down. And until you hear from the elected officials from that district on what we would like to see there, because we didn't bring this idea up of putting the school there. It was brought up by the Board of Ed people. And I can name the Board of Ed members who said that would be a right spot for it. We're not even there.
No, we're not.
I need you to make sure they're on the list to knock it down, and then we'll deal with that. But like I said to you, you don't live in the 139th, and that's in the 139th.
Better fodder for the capital plan.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
Okay. On the note of creating a construction team and capital reporting, I think that we are supportive of the move to try to get to more robust capital reporting. I just wanted to mention that going forward with Frank's office. Going back to the Barry Dunn thing, Dave and I are going to work with the health department to now do a mini version of what we did with the other permitting departments over in the other building with the health department. I love our health department. I think Dr. Rodriguez is doing a good job, but our licensing in the health department is weak, and it could use a lot of fixing, both from a technological perspective and from an operational perspective in terms of the timing of people renewing licenses, getting inspections done, that sort of thing. So we are going to work on that immediately. So, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, and if I can, through the chairs, I know Councilman Ortiz, you in particular, have met with the health director, with Councilman Castillo, and we've been looking for about a year already at what other bigger cities are doing with their fees too, and believe it or not, we're well under by a lot in what we do. So while you hear, developers and stuff, I think they want to do business here also because we're cheaper. So we also need to start looking at fair market value when it comes to, and it's not by $50 or $100, depending on some of the fees, it's a couple $100. So this would be perfect for us to have this outside company to do this thorough assessment so that we can be able to come before you with some realistic numbers.
Yeah, I just want to say too that before the health department and building department, then they'll go there, open the building department in the building, and then they'll come to the health department and they'll get a permit, and then okay, we're open for business. So now it's they're working together. I could say that.
They're working a little better. And part of it was our fault, and it was COVID. So when we put the software in place, we were just about to start the launch when COVID hit. Everything shut down. We rushed to get it going in the building and zoning department because that was the hot priority. And training fell off in the health department. And then specifically in environmental health, those inspection forms are really complicated. And so we kind of need some expert help with an agency, Barry Dunn, that has done this and is actually in the process of implementing this same stuff in other cities that can help advise us on how to do this better. So,
because another thing, what's happening, a lot of people are buying these businesses that have been in for years, and when they come here and look for the permit, they were never open up. There was never a business there.
yeah,
And now the city is cracking down on that. So
Yeah.
that's good, and that's money.
it's good.
Quick question.
Yes.
You reference a Barry Dunn study. Obviously, this would be an RFP, right?
So-
And is this budgeted for in any way, shape, or form right now?
So, yes, and I'm gonna look at Frank and Ken because we're going to use, Curtis has some money that was left over in his budget. We're going to try to get this done immediately, because we already had Barry Dunn do the other study, and because health department was already actually a part of that, because they did have a piece of it, we're actually just able to continue on with a new task order, so we don't have to like rebid the whole thing and anything. And this will be a much scaled back, shorter timeline, much cheaper project. So Curtis, I think, has it in his budget this year, but I don't think we're asking for anything.
This fiscal 25?
This fiscal 25, so we're not gonna ask you for anything, and Curtis can address that when he comes before you. I'm sorry, ITS Director,
No, son.
whoever that may be. Nona is corrected me.
Okay.
Can I say
medium
Nona?
And long-term goals?
Is that allowed?
That's allowed.
I'm sorry?
And medium and long-term goals?
Yep, okay, quickly, I only have a little bit left, and working with Fred, and I give a lot of credit to Nika on this one. Nika has been working very hard with the firm that we hired on the disparity study. We are using the same firm that the state of Connecticut used to do a disparity study of city procurement. This is something the council asked for. It's a constant theme, council asked, we're doing, right? So this study, even though it's taken a long time, I know some people are like, where is it? It's actually pretty much on schedule and on budget. It's just, it takes over a year to do a study like this. It's very involved. It requires a lot of surveying, a lot of pulling city data. So that study is almost done. When budget is done, we're probably going to schedule something in May, June-ish
End of May.
with the city council.
End of May, we had on having the final presentation for city council.
And we've asked the CEO of the company himself to come
present it.
and present it. This is a national firm that does this all over the place. There are going to be some recommendations coming out of that study that maybe we can implement. We can talk about these issues with minority contractors and the way that city does business. And, we'll update our data that underlies our MBE ordinance and our enforcement. That's what you wanted, you funded it, thank you, it's moving. So we have not ourselves received the final report. Fred and I, and probably Dave will jump in on that too, we'll look at it and we'll get you a presentation. And the last thing I want to talk about is, of course, we all want a police station, a new police station. With Dave's help, and the help of construction management, we have started the process of putting out an RFP to look for a consultant that can do the first step, the feasibility, to look at what property would be appropriate, what are the needs of the police department, how much does something like this cost. So we've started the first step. It's no secret that we did not get congressionally directed spending that we asked for from Congress for this. Jim Himes put it in, and Congress didn't do earmarks this time, but we just got the email yesterday asking for the new round of earmarks for this year because we think Republicans are going to keep it. And we will most likely be asking for some funding from the federal government to help support this project. This will happen in phases, right? So we'll start with basic feasibility issues, and then we'll go to, okay, now let's really plan. Once we've picked the site, we know what our needs are, and we're trying to work on funding. All right, now let's actually try to build the thing and plan for that. So that's where that money would come in. You've already put money in the capital plan for that. We appreciate it. We'll keep you posted. And with that, I'll just say, almost every single thing that was on my list that I mentioned today is because you all at one point or another came into the office or said it at a meeting. So if you have stuff, we try to be responsive. So please keep us informed on what you want us to do.
Okay, Councilwoman?
Okay, you keep relaying to council ask, so I am going to ask.
Oh, shit.
Because,
Oh, shoot.
because, for all the years that I have served on the council, -2, I would like to know why the position of assistant CAO was changed to deputy chief or deputy CAO instead of keeping it at.
Council, I'm just gonna ask you to hold off the plate, just, because you're getting into the budget, right, itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I wanna,
You told me I could ask when he was finished with his presentation.
well, I got a question on this first.
Oh, okay, go ahead, and then you could come back to me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, no problem, all
I
right.
will. Because there is one item that we, you know, I'm glad you didn't beat everything to death. But this one, again, has been around for years, and I don't understand why we don't do it, why we can't do it, because I think we can. That's the park stickers being sold online.
Yeah.
It is absurd that we ask our residents to go to one of two places to buy a ticket and move on. This is simple. I've spoken with the Parks Commission over the years. This could enhance our revenue on that and add to the aspect of compliance, because we then have to send people out to find out if they're compliant or not. So, can we make this happen? And if so, who's gonna be in charge? And
Fred and I just had a meeting on this a couple weeks ago with the park staff.
So, through the chair, so we have a few different problems with this. Waste, fraud, and abuse is an issue with this. Counterfeit stickers is an issue with this. And so we want to make sure that this is an ironclad, situation that we've built out, that the city, will make revenue. We don't want to lose a lot of revenue either. And we've had some situations in the past, last year especially, where we've lost some revenue because of fraud. And we want to make sure that we are making sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that counterfeits are not floating all around the city, and that our actual residents that do enjoy the parks are actually purchasing the stickers, and they're not being bamboozled by a charlatan that sold them a sticker for more than what it's actually really worth. So it's a robust conversation that we're having, and we want to make sure we have all the benchmarks in place to make sure that we're eliminating that counterfeit element and that waste, fraud, and abuse.
We have done something. We do want to talk to some vendors that have done this, where they sell online. So we have had that conversation. We've obviously changed a lot of other things about park stickers. For instance, there's no more cash sales of park stickers at the park in order to deal with our own internal vulnerabilities around using cash, or like the danger of an attendant at the booth being held up for that money. In addition to the fact that the Parks Commission actually is going to be, I think they're about to approve increases on the price of park stickers for out-of-towners, because our prices are like way, way, way less than everywhere else when it comes to out-of-town people. So the price for residents would stay the same, but they're working on that, and that's a revenue generator for us.
okay, good. Councilwoman Perry?
Really fast, Scott, do you know any place in the state that does park stickers online? Because I don't know.
Fairfield does.
Fairfield does online?
Most.
Because I know Stratford mails them to the individuals.
We used to do it a
Norwalk.
long time ago.
Nor can get them online.
So it's,
Yeah, okay.
we're an outlier as far as not doing it. And I think even if there's some abuse, we would still net out. Yeah. Go ahead, Maria.
I've raised this repeatedly over the years, and I asked that you consider it.
Stop.
We should have surge pricing. When it's 4th of July weekend, and you're an out-of-towner, I'm not talking about, there should be a significant spike in the price, okay? For those major holidays, when the parks are all packed, and I recommended this, surge pricing for those 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, probably Mother's Day, Father's Day, those are big surge pricing. Your standard pricing for an out-of-town resident or out-of-state resident, but really surge the price for those critical summer holidays.
Councilwoman, couldn't agree with you more. In fact, we raised that with them. I'd forgotten where they landed with the Parks Commission on that. Those are our busiest holidays.
Yes.
You can make a good chunk of change with those. And you know, part of it is about equity too. A lot of out-of-towners use our parks because it's a gem. And so, you know, it kind of, by raising those prices, it kind of gives our residents a chance too. But I agree with you.
I just want to say, many of those people with out-of-town plates are Bridgeport residents. They're not registering here to avoid the significant Connecticut motor vehicle taxes, but they are Bridgeport residents, but they're not converting. So I don't care, if you're not paying the right taxes, or any tax for your vehicle here, you get the big surge pricing too.
Totally.
And that maybe will help people.
And of course, the city council is dealing with that through the other contract you adopted, so.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We'll go to Amy Marie, then Alfredo, and then Councilman. I'm gonna have Frank just introduce the budget for this department, and then we'll go to you.
Thank
So,
you.
Amy Marie,
Thank
please.
you. I'm glad to hear that we're getting a little bit modern and getting away from the cash because it's theft, fraud, and the threat of robberies and stuff. But to bring that revenue in, you're gonna be having people pay by credit card. Are we processing that fee additionally to that, or are we absorbing that? Because I know we charge extra to pay fees online for other entities with the city. So how does that
Yeah,
work?
we always pass on the credit card fee for any transaction with the city onto the customer.
So it's the actual fee. That's just, okay, just making sure that it's, you know, it's with the actual fee, or are we increasing to make any extra revenue for overseeing any other type of record
Yeah, we wouldn't
keeping?
add anything, I think, beyond what the fee is, like the merchant just adds it to the price of whatever we charge.
Yeah, to just compliment, it's like the surcharge. For
Right.
example, like if you use your card in Vitals, right, it'll be.
Right, they charge you, yeah.
And then they charge whatever the surcharge would be.
Okay, thank you.
Alfredo?
Okay. Tom, and I just, because I did it yesterday, so I registered one of my cars, and another car, yeah. I bought another Mercedes, okay? This one's up there. No, but on the one, when I registered it, right, the state charged $15
Yeah, that's for us.
That's state parks.
for state parks.
Yeah.
Is it something that we?
So, yes, so I tell you, so
I'm just.
So that's a really interesting point, Alfredo, because we did a meeting on this issue because.
We've been asking for that.
No.
Last year.
No.
We talked about this last year.
No, we talked about this last year. So here's the thing. Hold on.
They wanna do it.
So we did a meeting on this because we were like,
For 10 years.
we would love to,
Exactly.
maybe mail out the stickers to people like other towns do, and maybe we could just add it as part of the tax bill. Of course, it brings up issues like, I don't go to the park, so I don't wanna, well, I don't generally go to the state park and I still pay the fee, but
Mandatory.
we don't have, but we were pretty sure we can't do it, because the state of Connecticut, the legislature, these guys are powerful, they can do what they want, the city
about the
can't.
council?
No, I don't think we can.
Ordinance.
We thought about this, right, Ken? You were in the meeting. We thought about this issue because that's exactly what we wanted to do. We said, let's just charge because we would be selling so many, by the way, we might even be able to lower the price for the resident stickers by doing this, lower from 20 to 15 or something, charge everybody, send it out in the mail. Beautiful, right? And that's what you all have been talking about.
Yeah.
Not so simple because we can't tack that on. We can't add to the motor vehicle tax bill.
No,
I
not
wish.
the motor vehicle, when they pay their taxes.
Right.
It could be in the taxes.
We can't tack onto the tax
Oh, no?
bill. We have no authority.
We don't have that. So,
It's a brilliant, I
So
completely
Ken,
agree.
do you think about something?
Well, free, not does it free, that's all.
Right, it's free.
Right, they do
all
it
right.
for free.
Frank, we're gonna look at the budget. It's not a huge one per se, but on page 146 in the book is where CAO is. So if you can just speak a little bit on that, and then we'll take any questions.
Overall, increase in the budget at about $76,000, as Scott mentioned. Part of that is due to property.
Gotta talk louder, Frank.
Oh, sorry. Part of that is due to property manager coming on into this budget at a lower salary and the project manager going to the public facilities budget. And then the rest of, there's not much discretionary spending in this budget, it's pretty much all personnel. And that's the major change for this.
Okay, all right. Anita, you can.
Yes, thank you. So, I don't know if this is applicable to Frank or it's applicable to whomever. But my question was, why did we go from assistant CAO to deputy CAO, when for years it's always been assistant? I don't see why change it to deputy when the process of the work is still the same. I think we should just left it at where it was. And then my other concern is when I divided that amount into two, because I believe that's for two deputy CAOs. I'm gonna speak for myself personally, because I'm always harassing the deputy CAOs. I think that their budget line is underpaid.
So I can address, that's a great question. So first of all, there's been every iteration of the CAO's office you could possibly imagine. A CAO with an assistant CAO with a deputy CAO, an assistant CAO with only a deputy CAO, a CAO with two deputy CAOs, a CAO with two assistant CAOs, an assistant CAO acting as a CAO. So there's no real consistency in how it's been done. And I'm talking like across administrations. It kind of, in this office, it really depends on who's in that office and what they're doing, how much work they're doing, and what they're seeing. We kind of beefed up the office a little bit. I mean, I think we have a really strong team, and I can't speak highly enough of the people that I work with. It's a pleasure, and they deal with a lot of crap all day. And I mean, you all see me. Those people are in the building. You see me. I literally run sometimes from one meeting to the other, and these guys are handling other stuff too while I'm doing that. I can't even imagine what would happen if I didn't have Dave and Fred.
No names.
Well, they're here. They're here. They're fair game. And I would lose my mind if it wasn't for Nika and Maritza. So I would just quit if I lost them. But to the deputy versus assistant issue. So two things. One is when we created this. Remember, we created this version of the office mid-budget year. So the only way to make it work was to hire two deputy CAOs because that's all the budget allowed at the time. Also, in the charter, there is a 2-year recall right for any position that exists. And as you know, there have been previous occupants of the assistant CAO title. So at the time, it wouldn't have been possible to bring on, even if we want to, but by the way, the money wasn't there, and this is how we constructed the office, so this didn't really go through our heads. But even if we wanted to create the assistant CAO positions again, there would actually be a recall right for the prior occupants of the office before we could hire new people to be in those roles. So that wouldn't have actually, from a legal perspective, even been possible at the time they created this. And I believe we're beyond the 2-year mark since we've had an assistant CAO. I don't have to look at the timeline. So now it would be possible, of course, if you wanted to do that. You're not going to hear any barking from me, but that's the history of why we did that at the time.
That was just a question. Thank you for a follow-up. And the reason I inquired on that, and as well as the salary compartment, was because I still have my old budget books and I compare the salary, so it kind of drew attention to me as to this amount compared to the previous salary. So thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
When I look at this, I see that the CAO and two deputy CAOs are getting 9% increases. Now, I don't know with the deputies, it could be one is getting more, So they're both getting 9%, I don't know. And under the BCAS agreement, everybody who's not part of a labor agreement, who's appointed, follows his BCAS. BCAS in no way has a 9% salary increase scheduled in the agreement. So what is the basis?
I can address that. You're gonna see.
9% increases when BCAS, I think, is at 3?
You're going to see that throughout the book because you adopted last year's budget prior to the BCAS agreement. So you've seen this, Councilwoman, year after year. What happens is the council will adopt the budget, and Nestor and Frank and every other budget director will only budget what is contracted at the time. So at the time that you set last year's CAO's budget, it was whatever we were making at the time. There was no BCAS agreement in place. And that agreement not only had a July 1 increase for that year, there's a July 1 increase for this upcoming year, which would cover this budget. It was actually, they were 1 year in arrears, which often happens with our union agreements too, is they're bargaining beyond the year, right? Like the contract is over and there's no increase. So that's the explanation for 9%. That budget was just wrong. That wasn't an accurate reflection because at the time you adopted the budget, the BCAS agreement was not signed. Does that make, are you following that?
You're saying you got a substantial salary increase, then you got the retro from the approved BCAS, and now you're getting this upcoming budget year's increase.
Well, every single unaffiliated and BCAS member gets that. So whatever their salary was in the budget at the time got 3% retro because they did not get a cost of living adjustment for that year. Then yes, as per the agreement, they were getting a cost of living adjustment for that July. And yes, they will get another one this upcoming July because that's the agreement. That's how this works. And you'll see that for every single BCAS member in the book.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what, is that not clear? It's just following the union contract.
Yeah. Frank Burton, let me ask you a question first. Okay, hold on. What is the projected BCSA increase for this year coming up?
The contract is 3% a year over 4 years.
It's 3%.
But the reserve, the money's in that reserve line, the retrofit, so it wasn't like, the money wasn't budgeted from last year, which is just in the reserve line, not in the salary line. So it's just a 3% increase this coming year.
Well, that's a good point, because a council member had asked earlier what that contingency line was, and that line is for this very purpose. They don't like to budget in the individual lines because it presumes that the contract's going to be, 1, signed by the city, and 2, approved by the council. We can't presume that at the time.
Frank, please.
Yeah, so, just, and this is budget practice, just that many municipalities follow, but at the time I'm doing the budget, right, I'm only going to go based on the contract I have for a number of reasons. Tom just mentioned one, you don't want to show your hand in the contract and by negotiations, right? The union may be willing to settle for a lesser rate than what you may put in reserve. So what we'll use is that required reserve account. We'll essentially put that year's increase into the required reserve account. And so you won't see it in the individual line until the contract gets signed, and then I have a salary table to go off of. Because we budget, every person in this budget is all the positions here are all done on an individual basis from salary tables and then roll up into these summary tables that we have. So that's just some additional explanation.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you know all the affiliates have a salary structure by ordinance, right? And you can never exceed that salary structure except via ordinance. So when you calculate these new rates, do they exceed the salary caps for these positions, which can only be adjusted via ordinance when it's above the range?
I don't believe, no.
You might not know about this.
No,
You might-
I do. No. And the simple answer, no. In fact, they're on the, if you look at the table, which you can look up right now on Unicode, you'll see that these actually are on the lower end of that range, but they're within the range. So as these union contracts go into effect, that table changes, and then typically, is it your office? Somebody sends to the city clerk and then to the city council the new unaffiliated table that gets updated in Unicode. So the answer is yes.
All right, so deputy CAO range. This is updated from November. 116,839 up to 128,516. And two deputy positions here are budgeted at 131,127. So it is above. But are you saying that's the 3% going forward, already built in there?
No, I'm projecting for next year, so the numbers that you read, I don't think they wouldn't have the 3% because the July 1 didn't happen.
Correct. So you're saying the 3% will be added on to the November ordinance?
142.
Okay, so in any case, the deputy positions are really at the top of the range. Okay, and then the CAO's position is kind of mid-range, but I would just call to everyone's attention, 2 years ago, last year it was 152, and now we're at 166. So that's a bump. So,
Can I follow up on this?
yeah, one question.
Okay, so let's explain. What happened last year, if you guys recall, the BCAS labor agreement was added to the agenda and supposed to be on the next day's agenda. It did not come out of committee, and so it was ratified because of that 30-day, the 30-day rule. But what happened after that was we got adjusted salaries submitted on the next agenda, and which was not passed via ordinance. It was submitted for accepted as recommended.
That's right.
Which is not lawful. You can only adjust the salary ranges via ordinance, which means we would have to hold a public hearing. We would have to vote on it. So it passed in that labor agreement because it was a craziness where it got on the city council agenda, try to add it to a special meeting agenda the next day, there was controversy. It passed because of the 30 days, but after that, we received another document calculated with new projections that set out in regular city council, just accepted for record. In other words, you don't need to vote on it.
That's right.
But as you know, that's unlawful. All the salary changes are via ordinance. Ordinances require public hearings, and we must vote on it. You just can't enter a document and say, just accept it for the record. And so I've been researching this. I think some people are, and I'm just gonna say, it's a big problem. Thank you.
Can I through the chair? I know the city attorney reviewed that process with labor and civil service, but I'm not aware it's the budget meeting, so I think you guys should deal with that in your committee because it was legally reviewed, but I'm not aware.
Yep. Ernie?
I have a,
We definitely did
because I can
that.
address this.
We definitely did that. And it was at the request or the understanding that the city attorneys gave us the right information. And this is why we need our own city attorneys. Because we don't agree all the time, Maria and I, but she's absolutely right that what we did was totally wrong. But we did it under the understanding from the mayor's, because I remember looking at all the people with the new salaries and those things, and we approved it.
Yeah, but Ernie, that's kind of a distract. Let me explain something. So, because this is not a new thing, I'm surprised to hear that this is happening this year. Because never mind that one ordinance amendment that was made when the city attorney had proposed the change in that salary. That was kind of a true change to the schedule. But the ordinance 2.36010, officers and unaffiliated employees, it explicitly says the position annual salaries and annual salaries for those acting in any position set forth in this section shall be adjusted in accordance with the negotiated across-the-board increases granted to other city supervisors. Every single year since this ordinance was passed, since forever, the table gets sent to you when the supervisor's contract has an increase. In the years that they were out of contract and they didn't have an increase, you didn't get a change in the table. For every single year that there's been a contractual increase in the city supervisors, you've gotten an update to this table, which is updated in Unicode. So this is not a new thing. Every single time, I'll take the next flight to Vegas and bet you.
Can I
promise. It's like, this is not a new.
Tom, this is what's going on. I'm gonna tell you what's going on.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I ain't messing with you,
We
Anita.
could go outside.
No, this is the problem. This is what's going on. Every year, you guys come to the budget. Who gets $7,000, $11,000, $14,000 raise every year? Doesn't matter. The unions don't even get that. They get the little 2%, $1.50. You guys are getting 7,000 every year, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, 11. No wonder we broke. That's where the money's going, and it's like, it's not fair for the taxpayers. That you guys are just, hey, get a raise, we're gonna fake it till we make it, we got 4 years, 8 years, whatever. And it's like, come on, man, what are we doing here? You're not satisfied with what you get, you want more. And it's like, you're whacking us, 8,000, what is it, 14,000 a position, Jeanette?
14,196.
Who gets a raise like that every year? Are we corporate here?
Yeah, but Fredo, let me just explain.
That's crazy.
With all due respect, it's every single department head and all city supervisors that are not department heads are getting the same. You're gonna see this throughout the book, so I'll address it tonight so that it doesn't become a problem for other departments. Every single one is going to show this inflated raise as though next year everyone's getting a big fat raise. That's not correct. They got a retroactive COLA increase for a year that the city supervisors union was out of contract. That was retroactive, a whole year, because they went a whole year without an increase. That was negotiated. They then got, last July, an increase of 3%. That was not reflected in this budget. In other words, if the contract was adopted on time, these increases wouldn't look like this. This is, I don't think people are following that this is just making up for retroactive contract that was adopted late. That's why it looks like, but it's not.
It only benefits the top.
You guys voted on the contract.
I mean, I'm just saying, but no, but to Ken's point, look, it's just following the union contract that is adopted. Now, if the council wants to consider finding a new way to change the unaffiliated ordinance, because the way the unaffiliated ordinance is, they say, we're not just going to come to the council every time to take this whole table of all the positions and like refigure out every year what those positions should pay. You just decided through ordinance, we want to tie this to something. What are we going to tie it to? We're going to tie it to the city supervisors union. When you vote on that contract, you are advised that any changes you make to that were also going to affect unaffiliates. If you want to change that ordinance, you certainly can.
I think we're gonna have to change it, because you know what it is? The morale. You're talking about morale? The people that been here 20, 25 years, that busting their butt, and they get this much. And the ones that just come in because they're political, it is what it is, political positions, we get paid the top.
May I make one minor other point too? Because this has happened multiple times. You remember this. We've had department heads or city supervisors like deputies come in and say, my subordinates are making more than me. And one of the reasons that happens is because if you don't have these increases, but the other unions do, we've actually had that happen multiple times. And the city council has actually voted on separate individual adjustments to positions because of that very problem. And in fact, this very council just, yeah.
Let me just say this, and the council, prior council members are to blame. There was a time, and I used when I was here, none of the mayor's staff people was in damn unions. City council, prior city council people allowed Bill Finch and Fabrizi to put everybody in a damn union, tie them in, and everybody's in a union now. So if anybody's to blame, don't get mad, because the council allowed it to happen. Putting everybody in a union, now they lined up with the union, get paid, everybody want to bitch and moan.
These are not union.
But what I'm saying is they tied them into, and somebody had to give the permission. Council gave the permission.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Ernie.
That's who did it.
But
Ernesto?
how can you say that Fabrizi, Finch,
Put them in unions.
put who in union? What about,
Put the different positions that never were in unions, allow them to be all grouped in the unions. And I can go down a list of people who never should have been in unions that are in unions today.
Political, they were protecting
I'm
their
just
jobs.
saying, that's how it
listen,
is.
maybe top notch, but
So-
if you're talking about people in the
No, I'm talking
totem
about top
pole,
notch.
they
Top
don't
notch.
get that. Even
Top
a
notch.
merit, whatever you call them, some individuals don't get it. And I will not say much, because I don't want people, employees, to be retaliated against
Right.
things that I might say.
All right.
Okay. Ken?
That's right, I apologize, and I'm not trying to knock anybody.
Scott.
I just wanted, if anybody would like, HR does, I get a copy of the CCM salary structure for titles. And in all defense to these folks and to the residents, every one of this is below the median for this region compared to other government official salaries. So please, I know it sounds high, but look at what's going on out there. Because people leave other places because they're getting higher salaries. And it's just the way it is.
Well, and listen, and never mind even just the high-paid staff, because I totally get and understand that issue, right? I hear that all the time, and people say similar things about the Board of Ed. We often respond with that type of thing. If you look elsewhere, they get paid more. But the other thing is, too, the unaffiliated table covers even lower-level positions that are just not union-affiliated. And so, like, you could have a problem, take like a project manager or an assistant project manager. You have one in a union.
We got it.
We got it.
We got it.
We got it, yeah.
We're
We
good.
understand.
Okay?
Okay.
So here's one thing I think that may help going forward, and I know we've done this in the past, we'll need to, but get from labor relations the most current projected salary scales by union. I know we got it last year, and so we know when we're looking at different departments about why they're, you know,
Yeah.
there are bumps on occasion.
Yeah.
So we at least need to be aware that with BCSA, at least last year, there was the bump. So we know about that going forward. So,
I think, to Ken's point, and to your point, Scott, and I think it's really important that the council look at CCM. I believe they put something up a few months ago on, maybe 6 months ago, on salaries, municipal salaries, right? We can ask CCM to do a study of how we rate against other municipalities. We're not gonna like what we see, but, we are not a competitive municipality. And we just saw that ourselves when we had a mass exodus to the Board of Ed
That's right.
of city employees, right? To make more money, because it was more lucrative. So I'm just saying, like, I understand, I don't like giving raises either, but I understand. We also talk about retention, and we also talk about, we wanna make money, but then when we want revenue increases, Fredo, you talking about revenue increases, people almost killed themselves, literally killed themselves, called me a liar, made up stories for a $20 increase to parking meters, and look at our revenues are down. But so I just want to say that I just need us to relish in that when we have this conversation, right? Because right now, it's something as simple as parking meters revenues, and we want to raise these fees. But everybody was dying over the sword, over charging people in downtown, and we're down almost $250,000 because parking meters in downtown are number 5 on the revenue list, and our residents are the ones paying the most tickets in the neighborhoods. So when you say these things, we need to look at, when we do the increases, you need to live with what you do. Because then in July, we're gonna be screaming and crying about my constituents, but then you don't wanna get the raises either, and then we lose staffers as well. So, this is the first conversation, it's not gonna be the last conversation, so I don't want us to die on the sword on this conversation right now. I think, get us the information, Ken, when labor relation comes and civil service, we're gonna hear the real numbers, and it's gonna be an uncomfortable feeling.
That's right.
About our reality. And our financial status is an uncomfortable feeling, but I don't wanna fall on the sword on this one conversation with the deputy CAOs and the CAOs increases. Because if we're gonna see this during the book, then we're gonna have 45 minutes of the same conversation every time we hit this line.
Because you're gonna
So,
see it.
we got the preview.
You're gonna see it.
I mean, say, we got the preview, you got the hint. It doesn't feel good, so everybody gotta get to work in the book. That's all I gotta say. It's the first department we've seen.
That's right.
And that means nobody really looked at it, because everybody's all in a tizzy about it.
Question.
I had,
I'm going to leave forward.
okay.
In terms of
Oh,
revenue,
oh, you heard that?
Watch out, Mama, that's my partner, man.
the project manager, property manager, excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense, and maybe I missed it in here, I know we have a line item for property sales, but do we have any sense of projections? I mean, we got 1.6 last year, which was a little bit of a boon, unexpected. But do you have any sense of where we're heading on that?
Frank, you want to go
If
first?
you don't,
on that?
that's okay.
I mean, you know, I think on that type of sale, that auction was awesome. And for
Right.
those that attended, I did, I know you were there, and it was awesome, it was really great. But there's not a lot of great properties like that. There was, you know, beautiful square parcels, people could buy up and build houses. There's a lot less of that, but there's some other bigger properties and a couple small ones. But why don't you talk about how you got to your number?
Yeah, I mean, we had a meeting with OPEC.
Bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
We had a meeting with OPEC to discuss multiple properties and, you know, working with the property manager to get a projection. The hard part with a lot of these is there is uncertainty because a parcel may have, there's differences of opinion, right? We saw in this meeting how we have differences of opinion. And there's differences of opinion of how a parcel may be used and the best use of that. So it was just kind of the best assumption, assuming, you know, maybe one of the properties that they had mentioned for a sale. But a large part of this number is an assumption for, a large part of the property sale number is fully worked with, the other properties would be smaller.
Councilman Martinez?
I just wanted to make a statement to my council colleagues. Take a look behind Rolanda.
That's good.
I love Brian, but remember that he's in the room. Because everything you say, quote in the paper. So, that's all I want to say.
Well,
Being
it's a
recorded.
little too late, it's been
Yeah,
all
we're being
done.
recorded anyway.
Yeah.
Just one quick follow-up through the chair from Frank's. The parcels that they are talking about, you know, Frank mentioned they're not gonna be as big as 3 million apiece probably, but each one of them is a multi-million-dollar potential. If it can be marketed
We're not
properly,
selling you.
sold companies, and really think that, I think 2 out of the 5 have a good chance of having most of the studios. The airport, and I can hopefully give you a briefing of the meetings with, you know, the staff that's working on it, but it seems to me more potentially possible that there's a lot of reasons that could be a good thing for the benefit of the area and airport.
No, no.
There's not. The city can't do
Get
certain
that out
things.
your mind. We're not selling
The
no
city
airport.
can't do certain
No,
things at this
no.
All right, right up, thank
That's
you.
a no.
We're
gonna sell you before we sell the
involved that will hopefully become something.
Councilman Ray?
It's important related to this ordinance, the pay scale. We have 4 elected positions in there, regardless who sits in the seat. The mayor, the city clerk, the town clerk, 2 registrars. They automatically get whatever DCAS get. The only thing is, when Anthony ran for mayor in the 1970s, when he came into office, he gave himself a 50% raise and 30 of his staff members massive raises. Residents in Bridgeport sued all the way to the Connecticut Supreme Court. They were outraged. While it was before the Supreme Court, Antonisi went back to the Board of Finance, which we had at the time, because he had given those increases without any approval. He got the approval, and then he had to ask for a waiver to keep all that money they had gotten. The Supreme Court made all of them repay that money from the time he did it without any approval until the Finance Board approved it. In the end, the Supreme Court said, because they had gone to the Board of Finance, am I correct, is that the term for the old one? Yeah, that they could keep the raises. It created such outrage in the state of Connecticut that the Connecticut legislature passed a constitutional amendment, which I checked, it is there, that a mayor Any elected official who serves a 2-year term cannot get a raise during that 2-year term, which is why the legislature passed themselves raises, but they couldn't get it in their term, right? They had to wait until they were reelected. Anybody in a 4-year term can get 1 raise after they serve 2 years, right? The mayor in these positions have gotten numerous raises in violation of the Connecticut State Constitution, including, if you recall, when Mayor Finch was heading out of office, they had passed salary raises 2.5 years before his term was up. What they didn't do is publish it in the Connecticut Post, and by the way, I've gotten years and years of records from the city clerk's office. If you remember, he gave himself a massive raise and all his people, I think 7 days before they walked out the door. 7 days after this mayor came into office, he had the city council pass another massive salary increase, when you're required to serve 2 years of a 4-year term. So I have all these records. It is problematic. This is a constitutional amendment because of what happened in Bridgeport, surprise, surprise. And so no elected official is allowed to follow the BCAS agreement who gets an increase every year, whether it's COLA or whatever, because it's against the Constitution. And you probably know, you guys just pay, voted to give yourself a raise, which you deserve it. I mean, it's pretty pathetic what people get paid there. But you couldn't get that raise in that term that you approved it, right? You had to wait to get reelected. And so I've gotten these records, I've been working on them. Unfortunately, they got wet, and I told Scott I was working on this, and that this has been presented to Taisha. So I just want you to know, none of these elected officials, they've all gotten raises in violation of the state constitution. So I just ask that needs to be addressed. You can look this up yourself. This is readily available information. I've gotten tons of record from the city clerk's office. So we have these elected officials, and most of them, I don't think the registrar knows this or the city clerk knows this. They're like the victim of what's been happening. But I think people at high levels should know this, especially when it happened. This whole constitutional amendment is because of what happened here. So
I don't have my law degree till next month, but the quick answer on that is, depending on how the salary structure, or the cost of living adjustment, as it's called, is set, whether it's by ordinance in this case, or like in Hartford, I think it's tied to the increases that Superior Court justices get. They have determined that those cost of living adjustments aren't subject to the constitutional limit. Of course, that's something that the courts can expound on, but that's not a new thing either. I mean, tonight we brought up a lot of topics that have been like multi-decade things that have happened, so it's very, I don't want to sit here and address this tonight. This is not a courtroom, but.
I just want to make sure judges aren't elected, right? They're not elected.
No, I'm just saying in Hartford, that's the way that their mayor's increase goes. I know the constitutional amendment you're talking about.
And it doesn't give you any exceptions for any elected official. So
All right, that point is well taken. Let's move on.
All right. Frank, anything else? Okay.
I rest.
Thank you. Deputies, others?
Start your lawyer stuff already.
Okay.
I guess
All right.
I have to.
So I'll just kind of get us to wrap up here. Again, Frank gave us the kind of the cheat sheet to look at.
This is good, Frank.
Keep in mind, there is that $5 million hole, which is going to get our attention. We need to think about how to fill that. The only thing I do want to say also is I'll applaud Frank for coming to us with a budget about 1% increase. Again, with what's going on federally, state, these are dangerous times. So the fact that we're working with a tight budget is good, but we're still going to have a lot of decisions to make. Co-chair. Hey, everyone, please. Excuse me.
Frank,
Thank you.
I want to thank you because you made this real plain so everybody could understand it. So I want to thank you, and I'm hoping that when I go through this budget book, I'll have to be on page 1, but I got to jump to page 200 to find what it is I'm looking for. Can I get a motion to
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
See that, 500 tons a day. That's less than scrap.